When do you encourage people to take these activities back to your work group? And when do you say, do not try this at home? Love the question. So that's some initial thoughts. Honestly, most any activity in my foundational workshop that by now you've seen in many different ways in the webinars, in the lesson plan, as well as in the handouts. If you sat through an all day with me, I'll bet 4 to 6 times I say, how could you imagine taking this back to your team? How could you use this worksheet back with people you work with? How could you take this to staff meetings? One-on-one, supervisors as you're meeting people in your weekly or bi-weekly one-on-ones, or if you're, you set up kind of high five buddies within your team, how could you do these activities to build relationships outside of staff meetings? And people have ideas, and of course they'll have ideas and that'll remind me of ideas, or I'll have a new one. And so we often will talk about it. And so I'm scaffolding their capacity and courage and willingness to realize, yeah, we can take this back. And then it's, well, what could be the impact? So for instance, after group identity cards, remember the IGO, trifocals, individual level, what are your group memberships, and then what's an organizational policy at any time in your life that did not meet your needs as a group member. So I'll say, what could be the impact, especially after we talk at the group level, if everybody in your unit had this level of understanding of each other? And usually people are like, yeah, it would help so much. And then after the socialization questions, activity, I'll say, what was the impact? And I don't say answer, but I say rhetorically, how many people that you work with do you have this level of understanding with? And usually it's like 0 or maybe 1. What would be the difference if you felt this way, had this level of information about everyone you work with? And usually people say, well, when we're in conflict, I'll see them more as a whole person. I'll kind of understand why they do what they do. I have more context. But mostly we've had this relationship building. I mean, it's not like we're best friends, but this was pretty intimate. So I will give them much more benefit of the doubt, a much wider box within which to trip up, mess up. And I might engage them with a question. It's like, can you say more? What was your intent? As opposed to triggered direct response, which I'm not saying is right or wrong, but relationships usually do not build with triggered direct responses. They may over time, but usually that'll get a pushback. And so again, as we're engaging, using pairs, panning, asking questions, those relating and sharing for sure, those help, I think, build relationships, especially when someone makes a misstep or has an impact they didn't intend. So those for sure. And then I always say, well, who commits to doing this? And if they're not a supervisor, I'm like, who's going to go back and talk to your supervisor how to use this unproductive meeting behavior, how to go back and talk about learning guidelines. And so that's kind of how I do it. Similar to what we just talked about around clicks, passion, that can go back, mattering and marginalization can be one people can redo. Because it's one thing to do it in a large group where you might have some people from your unit, and it's very different. Even if you're doing it again with the same person, you might go deeper. But if you take it back to the unit, say mix up so it was somebody different than you might have been with at a workshop. Group identity cards, you have that list of, I think, 12 different ways to use them. And so everything from the socialization to how do you get seen and treated to which ones are on your screen, not on your screen as much, which ones impact how you're seen in the community versus in your family, friends versus here, different kinds of meetings. So any of that, any of those questions could be one at a meeting and then 2 weeks later another one. So you're just using group identity cards, different groupings, and getting people to talk honestly about themselves, learning about others. You could do one, what do you want to know more about? And you've seen the way I do it. Left-hand side is which ones you know a lot about. Middle could be you know some. Right-hand side, you really want to know more. And then have people share the really want to know more, or have the whole list up on a wall and have people come check off 3 to 5 they really want to know more. So no one knows who's writing what, but you get to see then how many checks or stickers. And that can really set up for your professional development ideas. Definitely the microaggressions worksheet, that along with the unproductive behaviors can be a way to talk about what has happened to us as other people interact with us, what's happened to you on your own as you've been in other meetings or one-on-one or on the phone with people, and what could you do? You could do what could you do to every meeting for 6 months or for an entire year, and it's free professional development. You can have the pairs, handouts, and engaging skills or any other activities, worksheets that you have from the course, and have people maybe try a couple skills. So by the 8th time you're doing it, try these 2 skills as you're thinking about this so that they're broadening their capacities. And then finally, one more thing to take back is the analyzing practices, policies, services with an inclusion lens. So again, using the group identity cards, they can brainstorm an initial set of policies, practices, services, do 1 or 2 every staff meeting maybe, or if there's one that is going to take like hiring, onboarding, volunteers that want to go take it, map out the entire process. That's called discretionary points mapping. Map it out, notice areas that are gaps, notice what we could improve, and anything that's happening that actually is not useful with an inclusion lens. So come back to the team, share it, get some more ideas, and then somebody figures out how to implement it and make it how we do it, standard operating procedures. So those are my ideas about, especially foundational work, what you can take back and use. Now let me talk about what I recommend you don't take back. Welcome, somebody else just joined. We're talking about the question, what activities do you recommend people taking back to the work group and which ones don't? And we're just on the don't one. Anything that's people experience in a workshop that they see you navigating interpersonal dynamics, group conflict, facilitating authentic dialogue, real-time dialogue, I would encourage people to say, we've just had an amazing conversation this workshop, as you're closing out. And while people tell me it looks easy as I ask questions and engage, or someone hits a deep emotion, or there's 2 people triggered and they watch me engage them and they think, that was easy. It's actually not. It's taken me years to learn these skills. And so what I'd say is really be reflecting on your own skills. Maybe look at the workshop handout, self-assessment of inclusion practitioners. There's some skills there. You might want to include the handout of navigating difficult situations in your packet and say, go through that. And if you have mostly 4s and 5s and you've gotten some training about navigating difficult situations, maybe conflict mediation, then maybe. But this is what I'd still be saying, I often think if there are dynamics going on in your work environment, microaggressions, unproductive dynamics, bullying, then it really helps to bring an outsider in so that you as the supervisor, you as a participant can be a part of the conversation. Even if you have the skills, having outside facilitation can work. If you have cliques, if you have real-time conflicts, years of things building up, these activities may help loosen the ground, till the soil, but if you want to directly address them and do team building around them, do some retreats, I would at least have a co-facilitator, if not have someone else come in. So again, you can be a part of the conversation. And then the last thing around that might be caucusing. Again, you may do caucusing in your workshops. You might lead caucusing. You have some of the tools and strategies that I use. I would not recommend that people do that with their teams. I would keep that at the organizational level. Caucusing is part of navigating group conflict around race, sex assigned at birth, gender expression, identity, class dynamics can be part of the intervention. But again, I would have outside facilitation. Facilitating caucuses is a very advanced skill, in my opinion, designing and facilitating them. Needs deep capacity for you to be a very clear instrument. So having done a lot of deep work, a lot of healing work, and again, I don't want to say don't do it, but I really want you to be very thoughtful before you move into that. And if you haven't done it before, clearly watch people, see if you can apprentice. Co-facilitating where you're the second might be ways to scaffold your skills up. And if you don't follow my advice, then you'll probably be useful in some ways, and then things will blow up and you'll realize what you can't do yet and use that as a learning opportunity to do it. I think I'm sharing advice I wish I had done because I moved into running these before I was ready. And so that's what I have about that one.